Hello everyone, and welcome to this video on programming and coding websites. In today's lesson we're going to be going through making HTML documents that you can then see on the internet. So to start us off with, I'd like you to have a think about this question. In the previous lessons we looked at the design of websites and how and why they look. So what I would like you to do is just take a couple of minutes to have a think about these questions, pause the video and then come back. So, the questions we've got here are: what apps annoy you when you use them and why? And I would like you to think about the experience of, are they easy to use? Can you find things? And is anything broken on the website? Now, I've got no doubt at some point when you've been browsing the internet or your apps that something has annoyed you. Something might have been very difficult to find, there might have been a bug, something got lost, or maybe the website just shut itself down for no identifiable reason. There are lots of things that annoy us when it comes to using and programming websites, and it's important to bear these things in mind when you actually design your own websites. A lot of thought has gone into almost every single website that you see on the internet, and we have had a look through quite a few of these websites. However, today we're not going to be designing a website like we did in previous lessons. We're actually going to be coding them and creating actual websites using HTML. So, today's objectives are very straightforward. I would like you to know what language is used to program websites, what are tags and how are they used, and how can we create a website using HTML. So let's get on with that. Now, in the last few lessons we have very briefly covered how we program websites and what language we actually use. The language we use to code websites is HTML. But what does that stand for? Well, HTML means Hypertext Markup Language. And you're thinking, well, what's that? That sounds very complex. And it's not actually that complex, you see. Hypertext is digital text. It's words and text on a computer. That's all it is. Anything you see on the internet that is textual, or even images, that is hypertext. The next question we have to ask is, well, what is markup? Markup is all about the formatting of our websites. How do they look? Describing where things go and what they should look like. How are things arranged on the page? There are lots of different kinds of markup languages, and HTML is one example. Another question that you may or may not have asked is HTML actually a programming language? And the answer is no, it isn't technically a programming language. It is a scripting language. The reason why it isn't a programming language is because it doesn't process information. When we've looked at Python and Scratch in the past, we have asked the computer to perform lots of different tasks, such as calculations and mathematical operations and so on. HTML doesn't do this. Its sole task is to format and display information in a pretty way on the internet. It doesn't do any processing whatsoever. So the next question from there is, how can websites actually process information then? Because if all they do is display information using HTML, how am I able to actually do useful tasks on the internet? Well, one example is JavaScript. Now, HTML doesn't just sit by itself and work on its own accord. It uses other languages to help it actually process information. One of these is JavaScript. It's not related to the programming language Java, however it is highly linked to HTML and allows it to process information. Other languages that work with HTML are Python, which we have done in the past, and next year, in Year 9, we'll be looking at some JavaScript and potentially looking at some web development using processing. But for now, our objective is just to focus on HTML and getting those websites up and running. So, Before we do that though, we need to know that HTML is used to create web pages. However, a question that we need to ask is, what is the difference between a web page and a website? They are very specific definitions. A web page is a single page that you can view on the internet. Just a single page. A website is multiple of these web pages linked together. Now, when you've been using the internet, you've probably seen that when you're scrolling through different websites, you can click on blue links that take you to different places, maybe on the same website or to other websites. The function of HTML is that it sends you to other places. It links you to other pages. How can we think about this visually? Well, here is a web page. It's just a single sheet, and it could have images, it could have videos, text, whatever. It's just a web page by itself and it goes nowhere. A website is multiple of these web pages linked together. As you can see, this web page is linked to this one, and it is also linked to this one here. This is a website. Another way of thinking about it is an actual web. Now, this is where the name website and web page comes from. Why? Because if you look at a spider's web, you can see that we've got lots of points, and we can think of each of these little individual points as web pages. The website is the entire spider web. The links between them are the links between each of these pages. So when you think of a website, think of an actual web. When you think of a web page, think as one of these points on the spider web that is connected by the silk to other points. It's very important to make that distinction, because later we're going to be creating web pages that we can then link together to become an actual website. Now, HTML uses something called tags to describe the way things look on a web page, and I've got an example of some HTML code right here. A tag is anything between these two pointy brackets. Okay, that's a tag, that's a tag, that's a tag, that's a tag, and so on and so forth. And that's all there is to HTML. It's just a bunch of tags with things in between them. And tags describe where things go on your website, what they should look like, and maybe even what they should do. What might the following tags do though? Let's have a think about it. So B, tag end B. I'll leave you 2 seconds to think about that. This tag is actually the bold tag. It makes words bold on the page. The next tag, U and end U, that means underline. Hopefully you can see the self-explanatory nature of these tags. I is actually italics, so you can use it to make any words you want in italics. P, this one may be a little bit more challenging. P means paragraph, so you can use this in your HTML to define where paragraphs of texts start and stop. This one should hopefully be very straightforward. This one is an image, and the src means source. So what we're saying is the image source is what? And what I've got here is a link to an image. This one is sun.jpg. That's the file type. That is the file name. Now, intuitively, that's a picture of the sun, as far as we can tell. The next kind of tag that we'll experience is the H tag, and this stands for heading. This is sort of like our titles and our big bold print on our website, sort of like the newspaper headlines. And there are several different kinds. They range from H1 all the way to H6. H1 is the biggest tag, the biggest heading, and H6 is the smallest one. The important thing to take away here is that every start tag has an end tag. How do we define end tags? Well, we use the backslash at the end of each tag. So for example, if I go to the code over here, we can see this example tag, the head tag. Now of course we haven't covered what the head tag is, but don't worry, we'll cover that soon. You can see it starts with pointy bracket open, head, end of the bracket, and then a little bit further down we open a brand new bracket and we have a slash head and pointy bracket. That means the head of this particular HTML website exists between these 2 points. I can do another just down here. As you can see, H1, which is a heading, the big bold one, the biggest heading, starts here, and the slash H1 tells me to end the heading just here. And you can see it with a lot of different tags here, like nav and like the anchor tag just there. The only exception to this, and to be fair there are some exceptions, the main one is image. As you can see here, image doesn't actually have an end at all. It's just image source equals whatever that image is and where it's located. So that's the only one that we mainly need to think about when we're doing our HTML. Here is an example of a very simple website that I've coded, and you can see down below here how it actually looks online if you were to view it online. So we start off with HTML and then end HTML because, as I say, apart from image, every tag needs a close tag. We do head, end head, body, end body, and in here I've got 2 P's, which, as we've talked about, are paragraphs. And you can see the corresponding representation is over here for this website. We're going to go into more detail about how these websites are constructed now. So, websites are sort of like animals. They have a head and they have a body. With any animal, most of the time, the head always comes first. Everything that is displayed on a website goes into the body. Anything you see on a web page, it goes into the body. So then we're thinking, well, what's the head for then? Well, the head is actually quite important. Maybe not straight away, but depending on how complex your websites get, it is very useful. The head defines important information about your website, such as the tab name and the styles and the formatting rules for the whole page. There are many different things that go in the head. For example, in JavaScript, if you're deciding to make some processing, some of the scripts could go into the head of your website that will make your website actually do something interesting. But you don't need to worry about that right now. The only thing that will go into your head at the moment is something called a title, and we'll come on to that in a moment. Now, all websites start with the open bracket exclamation mark doctype HTML. Why is that the case? Well, it's very important and very simple. What this says is, computer, this, what you are going to read in a moment, is a website. The computer, after reading this, knows it's looking at a HTML document and can read it using the rules it has to format and display those websites. Anything between the HTML and /HTML tag is actually converted into the web page. If it doesn't go between these 2 tags, then it isn't displayed on your web page. So it's very important to make sure that anything you do is between these. So earlier I showed you a website. If I just scroll back just a little bit, here is a very basic website. So I've got HTML here and /HTML here, or should I say /. This is what is displayed on your web page. If I had something underneath, like down here, nothing would be displayed from that point on, because this end tag says to the computer, stop what you're doing, the website has ended. So it's very important that you have this tag on your website. Back to this example, yeah, HTML and /HTML here tells you the start and end. Now, all websites have the following structure, and you 100% must have this every time you make a website using HTML. Every website has to start with exclamation mark doctype, which we've said starts the website off. It tells the computer that what it is going to read is a website. It always then has HTML and a /HTML at the end to say anything between here is part of the website. It also always has a head, and the head defines important information about the website. It's not always necessary, depending on what website you're making, but the very minimum you would need is a title, and I will explain what the title is about in a moment. You also need the body, and this is the most important part of your website because this is where the meat of your website goes, inside of the body. Now, it's all well and good talking about this in theory, but how do we actually do this? Well, we can start making a website together, and feel free to join along this process if you would like, or pause the video at any point and work through this task. Now, HTML is wonderful in that it's very simple, and you can program HTML using Notepad or Notepad++. If you have a Windows computer, which I would expect most of you probably would, Notepad is freely available on your operating system already, and you just need to find it and open it. What does it look like? Well, when you open it, it looks something like this. It's just a blank document with nothing in it. And this is actually quite powerful for programming, and you can actually program a lot of different things in Notepad. However, it's not as powerful as an actual programming environment. Now, earlier, I said about the title of your web page, and title doesn't mean what you think it means. Title isn't like the title of a newspaper, such as, a big news heading or headline that you might see. The title tag actually refers to the tab name on your browser. What might that look like? Well, if I go back very quickly, I can show you. So over here, I've got a very basic website, and here's my title here. Title, my website, end title. And when I actually run this website, I get this. And what you can see up here is my website is the title. It's the tab name. It's not a title down here that you might see, as I say, like a newspaper, a headline. It's a tab name up here. So whenever you do your title, what you're actually doing is you're doing the tab name. And it's very important to be aware of that, because in the past I've seen a lot of people try using the title as an actual headline, like a newspaper. And that's not the case. So flash forward back to what we were doing. The other thing to remember is that your tags always have to have an end tag, except on the image. And we will come on to images in more detail. However, you need to provide your images with a pathway, which is a link on your computer to where your image is stored. And finally, my other tip is to use the tab button when you're indenting your website rather than using the space. Now, the tab button will look like this on your computer. Usually it will say tab, and it will have a pointy arrow going that way and a pointy arrow going that way, and maybe there's a line at either side. And what this does is this creates an automatic indentation of a certain space. So for example, this could be 4 spaces worth. Rather than typing on your spacebar 4 times, you can press tab once and it will create this much space for you, and that allows us to keep everything aligned on our program. And I'll show you how that actually works in a moment when we start doing some actual HTML programming. So, that aside, let's make an actual website. So all you would need to do is to open Notepad and copy and paste the code you see in red on the screen right now into your Notepad document. I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to do it from the start to show you how it works. So I open my Notepad like so, and I have an opening tag with doctype HTML. Remember, this is what tells the computer it's reading a HTML file. The next thing we do is type HTML, and before I do anything else, I always add the final tag that matches it. The reason why I add the final tag right now is because I don't forget it later. Oftentimes when I see people programming HTML, they'll create the opening tag, this one, and they'll miss off the closing tag, and then they'll say, oh, this website doesn't work for some reason, I can't figure out why. Most of the time, you've missed a tag. Next up, I'm going to type in the header, and remember, it needs the forward slash, saying that again. Inside the head we have the title, and what you may have seen me do there is use the tab button. Oops, apologies, not HTML, title. So if I go on to the next line, I type 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not there yet, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this particular tab uses 8 spaces, and rather than pressing the space button 8 times, I can just press the tab button once and watch it jump. There we are, and I can do it again. I'm over here now, and I can do it again. I'm over here. The point of that is it lines up your code very nicely, and it's not necessarily an important part of HTML. It does nothing apart from make it look pretty. However, in some programming languages, such as Python, indentation is absolutely essential to making the program work, so it's just very good practice to get used to using indentation using the tab button. Anyway, let's move on to the body. So I have the start tag and the end tag, like so, and inside the body I would start writing the tags that would be actually displayed on my website. So if I just make this just a little bit shorter and move it across, I can actually copy the paragraphs inside. Now if you notice here, what I have done is I've indented this part, and what that tells me is that the P, the paragraph tag, is inside the body. And likewise, I can see here that the title is inside the head. So paragraph is inside the body, title is inside the head. Because it's indented, it makes it easier to see. Anyway, now I will indent and do P. Welcome to my website. Remember the end tag, and preferably type it correctly, unlike me just there. I'm going to do another one, and this one says, I hope, if it's spelled correctly that is, I hope you... Now this is interesting because I've got a tag inside of another tag. You can do this a lot in HTML. Enjoy your stay, end tag. Now this has gone on to the next line, but don't worry, that's just because it's run out of space to show it. If I move this along just a little bit, you'll see it jumps back to the side where it's supposed to be, and it's on the same line. Next up, I'm going to do tab indent img src equals, and in here what I would do is I would put my pathway. Now I'm not going to do that just yet because I would like to explain what's happening on this line here. So this B, as we said before, means bold. So what is going to happen when I run this website is this particular word in between the start and end tags is going to be a bold word. You can use all sorts of different tags such as underlining and italics to have different effects on your words, and there are so many tags that we can use in HTML to format our websites, and we're going to go through quite a few of them during this video. However, img source, now this is the interesting thing. Why? Because this is of course going to show us an image. However, using images in HTML is a little bit fiddly. Why is that? Well, the link to the file needs to be very specific. The way to do this in its simplest possible form is to save your website. So if I go File, Save As, and I save into the area that I'm working in, so here we go, I'm going to save it as example website.html. It is extremely important that you call it .html. That means it will actually format as a website. So I press save, and now you can see up here the name of my file has changed, and I can now actually run this website. How do I run the website? Well, you go to the file where you saved your website. So if I open the file location, you can see here example website.html, and that's my actual website in HTML format. If I double click on it, it will open a brand new page that you can view your website. Now, the important thing to note here is that your website doesn't actually appear on the internet. It actually exists on your computer. That means that you can create a website in Notepad, but no one else apart from you can see it because it only exists on your computer. If you were to actually create a website that you wanted other people to view, you would have to have a domain and register that domain and your website for other people to view it online. However, that does cost money and therefore might be impractical. However, we are still learning the skills to create websites here. Now, my website has loaded and it is extremely simple. Welcome to my website. I hope you enjoy, and enjoy is in bold, your stay. However, the image hasn't shown because I haven't given the computer a pathway to the image. But for the moment, you can see my website currently exists. Brill. Now we need to actually put that image in. Now, for the moment, I've got this image here, example image.bmp. It's a bitmap image. Now, if I go and edit it in Paint, as you can see here, I'm just going to do some squiggles. Yeah, otherwise it would be a blank document. I'm going to save that for demonstration purposes, and now we can actually go back. Example image.bmp is saved in the same area as my HTML website, and it's extremely important that your website is saved in the same area as your image and vice versa. The reason being is it makes it easier for the computer to find that file. Otherwise, you would need an extended pathway such as c ... user / documents and so on to find that website image. In this case, all we need to do is quote the actual image name itself because the website is in the same location as the image. So if I go back to my code, what I can type in here is example image.bmp, and now my image should appear on my website. So you go File, Save or Control S, and you go back to your website and you'll see, ooh, nothing's changed. Well, press refresh and look, there's my image. Now, of course, this is just a squiggle. It can be any image you like, but that is the protocol for adding images to your website. It's just img src, and it's very important that you get the src right because I've seen many people do scr, which is not correct and it will not work. And it's also important to make sure you have the tag here that just ends the image. You do not have a standard end tag like /img. That is not the case for images. And what I've created here is a very basic website. Now, let's go back. So, just to recap, when you're doing your image, you need to find the image or file on your computer, i.e. where have you saved it, and once you find it, you need to right-click on the file and select Properties. Now, this is the case if you want to find a longer pathway where your image is not saved in the same location as your HTML file. You click on Properties and you will see in about this area a location which is very long. You copy and paste that into your website code and your image source, and then you need to add to the end of the location the exact name of your file. So if I were to do this in my actual HTML document, as you may have seen, like this, I could make a brand new image, img src, and what I mean is you would do something like this, user / document / image.jpg, for example. This is what I've just talked about previously. This is a longer link to the image rather than what I've done up here, which is just the image name and what file type it is. However, most of the time you shouldn't be doing this because the images ideally will be saved in the same location as your website. Now, some challenges are provided here, and I would like you to pause the video and work on some of these challenges. I would expect this would take you 20 minutes roughly, maybe to half an hour, depending on your experience and confidence. You have covered all of the tags you will need to attempt this. However, the final task is a challenge and you can use the internet to find out how to resize images. We won't be covering image resizing in this video, but we will at another point. So pause the video now and try these tasks. Okay, so I'm going to work on my website and show you how you can complete these challenges. So let's go back to my code. I move it aside just a little bit so you can see the actual questions. So the first one is add another paragraph to your website explaining what a tag is used for. Make the word tag in bold. Now we have covered some of this because it is in the second line just here on how to do it. Now I need to start with a P because that is paragraph, and remember, always end it straight away because otherwise you might forget and it might cause errors in your website. What I'm going to do now is to actually explain what a tag is. And a tag helps format a website in various ways depending on the specific tag used. For example, the bold tag makes text between the open and close tag bold. This is an example, and what I'm going to do is on this as an example I am going to put a B, and then at the end of this I'm going to put a \B, and what that means is everything between the start and the end tag of this B is going to be in bold. And this isn't a technical definition. The technical definition will be earlier in these slides, but it gives you an idea of what tags are actually about. And when I run this program, you will see that it will create this paragraph exactly as defined. Next up, we're going to add another paragraph to your website that uses bold, italics, and underlined words, all in the same paragraph. Now, you could do one or the other or any combination you feel, but I'm going to do them all just to show you how it works. So I'm going to do P. This sentence is bold, italics, and underlined. And of course, I need to make sure I have my end paragraph. You're looking at this and saying, well, clearly it isn't bold because you haven't used any tags, it's definitely not italics, and it's definitely not underlined. So let's change that. I'm going to put B at the start, and of course immediately I will add my end tag just there. But it's not italics, so let's do that as well. Open I, and towards the end I'm going to do \I, and then finally underlined is of course U, so I'm going to do an open U, and then at the end a close U. Now if you've got a lot of text and a lot of different tags, things might get a little bit confusing. So earlier I talked to you about using tab to make your code look pretty, and you don't always have to do this, but if things are getting a bit complex and you can't find something, it's good to indent your tags in a pretty way to make it easier to read. And what I mean by that is, if I do this and add this line to the next one, I can indent my B onto the next line, I can indent my I onto the next line, and finally I can indent my U onto the next line. I can then do the same thing and match up my tags one at a time like this. And the benefit of this is that you can tell if you have the start and end tags. And I could do this again with the U here, do that, and have the other U like that. And it means start, end, start, end, start, end, start, end. Things are very clear, but you don't have to do that, and it's at the minute very unnecessary. But if you're struggling to find out where your tags are, it's a very helpful method for achieving that. Now, let's go back to the task at hand. Add a heading or a banner to your website, like a page title or a newspaper headline, using the H1 tag. So I'm going to, up here, because it's a heading, remember, or a banner, or a headline, I'm going to say H1, this is a title. Now remember, there is a difference between the actual title tag and the fact that this is the title of the page, like a newspaper. I should ideally change this to heading to make it clearer. However, it means the same thing. It's a title for my web page. It's the first thing, the big thing that you see. Now, in order to add images to your website, you will need to either download them or create them yourself in Paint or what other program that you have and save them into the same location. I'm not going to add these images as part of the task number 4 here. However, I highly recommend, if you haven't done so already, to give that a try. Now, let's have a look at this actual website and see if it works. So, File, Save. I will open my website again and press refresh. And voila, look at that. This is a heading. There's my H1 right there. It's the big one. It's the headline. It says, this is what my website is about. Down here, I've got the paragraph that talks me through what a tag is. And of course, this part is in bold. The interesting part is down here, I've got a sentence that uses all 3 tags of the bold, italics, and underlined. You can clearly see it's bold because it's different to the text above it. It's clearly underlined and it's clearly italicized compared to the above text. Those are some very simple examples to do with HTML websites and tags. Now, our web page only has one page, and that's not very good because a web page, as we've talked about, is not a website. So let's turn it into an actual website. Let's make another page and link these 2 pages together. How do we do that? Well, we need to create a brand new Notepad or Notepad++ file and make the new website like you did earlier. The code you could use is virtually identical to the one we've already got. You can make some changes if you would prefer. How I would do this is I would go to my Notepad, I would go File, New, and voila. Here's a blank website. All I do is the same process. I will do !doctype HTML followed by HTML and the end HTML tag. I will of course need a head. So I'm going to add a head and of course the end tag for the head. I need a body for my website and a close body. Remember, everything on the website that you see goes between the body. I'm now going to make a title, and the title is going to be, let's say, page 2, because that clearly tells us in the title bar or the tab name that this is another web page. In the body, I'm going to do paragraph. This is a new web page. Very simple, very straightforward. Make sure that you get the end tag correct so your website will work as planned. Next up, I need to actually save this website, and I'm going to call it page2.html. Brill, job done. The important part now is, though, we need to link these 2 websites together. So if I open the other web page as well, so open with Notepad, you can see I've got both web pages open now. So here's the code for this one, the new one, and here's my old one. And again, I've indented these parts, but I'm going to get rid of that just to make it a bit more compact. Get rid of that. There we go. Almost done. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. What I'm going to do is at the bottom of my original web page, I'm going to put a link to my brand new web page. And what will that look like? Well, we use the ahref tag, and what this stands for is anchor. And this provides the hypertext link, the reference to that actual page on your website. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my website and I'm going to type in ahref equals page2.html. So, what I've got here is the start of an anchor tag, and an anchor tag, as I say, allows us to connect different pages on the internet and different pages that we ourselves have created. And what you do is you of course fill your tag, and you also make the end tag. Anchor is actually a tag that uses an end tag, and the reason why is the text that goes in between the A and the close tag is the link that you click on. So let's say click here to go to page 2. If I move this along slightly, you can see that all the text is indeed there. This here is the link to your page. Now, like images, as we said earlier, if the HTML page is in the same location as your other website, your other pages, you can link to it straight away by just using this method here. However, if it is located elsewhere, you will need a longer pathway, and if you decide to link an actual web page from the internet to your web page, you will need the full URL. But I will show you in a few moments how to do an actual URL. For the minute, what we're going to do is we're going to save this web page and save this web page, and you can see here that I've got my 2 pages, example website and page 2. If I click on example website, it should open. Here we go, and at the bottom it says click here to go to page 2. If I click that, voila, this is a new web page, as you can see here. So I have now created an actual website. However, of course, the problem is now I can't go back to page 1. So in order to do that, what I do is I go back to my page 2 code and I make another anchor tag. So let's start that now. href, the anchor reference, is example website, and make sure it is 100% identical, otherwise it will not work. I'm going to type page 1 and then /a, or /a, sorry, again. I now have created a link back to my original web page. So if I save this one and I go back and refresh this page, you can now see it is updated with a hyperlink just here. That's what a hyperlink is. It is a link to another website. You click it and voila, it takes me back here, and I can click down here on the click here to go to page 2 and it takes me back, and now I have an actual working website. I mean, the website is not particularly interesting, it doesn't do much, but it is technically a website, and that is how anchors work. What we could do is we could have an actual link to an actual website, a real website. Let's do that now. Now, in order to do that, you need to find an actual web page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bbc.co.uk. Why? Because it's a straightforward and common website. What I need to do is I need to copy the URL, which is located at the top. So if you can see just up here, this is the URL over here. That is a URL. And what I will do is I will go back to my web page, let's say this one here, and I will type a href equals, and I paste that URL in there, and I'm going to say BBC and /a, like so. What I've done now is I have created another link to another page, but this page is actually a website. Now, the key information you need to know here is that when you put a website link into an actual website, you always must have the HTTP or HTTPS, whatever it is, part of the link, because if you just put www.bbc or whatever website it isn't going to work. You also need to have the starting part like this, and all you need to do that is just right click on the URL and then press copy. Job done, and then you can put it into your actual website. So if I save this web page again and go back to my page, if I click page 1, if you look down here, BBC, I've got an actual link, and if I press that, it takes me to the actual BBC website. And you can do this for any website you can think of. You could do it for YouTube, you could do it for TikTok, you can do it for anything. So you have now actually created a website that links to other websites. Well done. Now, let's move on. I have several challenges for you here. I would like you to be able to create another web page and add a link to it and back again to the first web page. So we're looking at 3 web pages now in total. The first one we made, the second one, which hopefully you have copied to get confident, and now I'd like you to create a third one to create a more thorough website. I want you to add a link to a real website to your first page, like I just did with the BBC, and copy the URL from that website to use its pathway. I want you to also find out how to use lists, unordered and ordered lists. Now, I haven't gone through lists in this lesson, and I won't be going through lists in this particular lesson. However, this is a challenge for you to figure out and do some research onto other HTML tags. And I would like you, in this unordered list, to create a website that includes 3 different URL links to 3 different unique websites. And then finally, I want you to change that unordered list to an ordered list. And hopefully, when you're doing your research, you will be able to see what that actually means and what effect it has. So those are the tasks I would like you to try now. So can you please pause the video and give them a try? Okay, so you should have tried those tasks now, and what I would like you to do now, if you are feeling unconfident with HTML so far, on It's Learning I have linked to you several worksheets to do with HTML that takes you through some of the core concepts where you can practice in a more structured way. These involve unscrambling HTML website code, as well as filling in the blanks and figuring out what line is missing from different pages. I would like you to give those a try. The home learning that I will set for this video is to complete the PLQ for this lesson.